I've played Unmatched Steel and Silver 10 times.
And I've played it once.
And we've got some thoughts to share in this episode of Little Big Thumbs.
Welcome to Little Big Thumbs, a channel that's all about finding games that are equally fun for little players and big players. My name is Milo.
And my name is JP, and today we're back with another of our Unmatched After 10 videos where we dive into one specific Unmatched set, talking about the board and the characters and our thoughts on it. And today we're talking about Unmatched Steel and Silver, and this is set in the Witcher IP. And before we received this review copy from Restoration Games, I was completely unfamiliar with The Witcher. How about yourself?
I've not watched the whole series. I'm familiar with the story a little bit, so I know some of the characters, but have never watched an episode.
After receiving this, I wanted to know a little bit more, and I binged the show, and I just love it. And I'm so much more excited about the set now than I was when I first received it. Anyways, in this video today, what we're going to be doing is taking a look at the board that's included in the set. There are 3 characters, 3 decks that are included in the set. We're going to go through each of those and kind of do a deck dissection. And then at the end of the video, we're going to do a comparative review. Both Milo and I have our very favorite Unmatched sets, and we're going to give this one a rating, comparing it to our absolute favorites to see how they stack up in that way. So I think we're ready to dive in. Are you ready to dive in?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, let's grab our swords and head into the battle, talking about this particular game. All right, so we're going to start by talking about the board that's included in this Unmatched set, Steel and Silver. And I think maybe the most notable thing of it is that for the first time in a long time, this board is a double-sided board with 2 different maps on it. And that's pretty exciting to see. In the past, the boards for the Unmatched sets have had the same board on each side, one with more maybe a gamer-friendly look with the different zones colored in very clearly, and the other side with the same board but more artwork with those zones more outlined than filled in. And so I guess my question for you before we dive in, Milo, if you had the preference between having the 2 different boards or having the 2 different accessibility options on the same board, which would you prefer?
I would definitely prefer the 2 different maps. Yeah, that's a way cooler thing for me personally, in my opinion. And I immediately noticed that this board did have 2 completely different sides. I remember when you were first showing me, you were like, this is the new set, blah, blah, blah. And you were just flipping the board over. You didn't even point it out. And I was like, oh my God, it has 2 sides. So I was pretty thrilled about that. Because like you said, it's been a little while since that's happened. So. Right.
All right. Well, let's take a look at the board that we've got here. The first side that we're going to talk about is Failing Forest. And this, I'm going to assume, I don't know the lore well enough to say, but I'm pretty sure this is the home of the Ancient Leshen, one of the characters we're going to be talking about in a moment. And this is a pretty standard board. It doesn't have any special effects on it. It is probably pretty accessible for newer players to jump into without having to learn any new little rules. And it's got some places to kind of hide on the board. There's no way to attack clearly across the board from one side to the other, like we see in many of the other boards.
Yeah.
But I think that's pretty unique. Any thoughts on this board, Milo?
Yeah, there are definitely some interesting zones that are either really small or a single space at all. Like the burgundy red in the top right corner, that's only 2.5 spaces. Yeah, like you said, a pretty basic board in that regard, but lots. I think that would be a good thing for beginners specifically. Lots of room to move around without any limitations put on them.
For sure. This game as a whole is pretty darn accessible. But I think for casual players, I think a lot of folks will dive into this game, especially with the Marvel sets. The Witcher has a lot of appeal outside of the board game community, and I think just the fewer things that you have to keep track of when you're not
Yep.
immersed in board games is a great thing.
Yeah. This this other thing that I noticed just now is the like giant gap in the middle of the board, which makes it rather difficult to sort of like jump across and get to like the opposing corner. You'll have to sort of like go around in that respect. So that's interesting as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot of chasing in this one. Cat and mouse. All right, so let's explore the other side of this board. This is kind of the headquarters, the den of the Witchers, where they go to train and rest. The main feature, the main unique feature of this board is that it has one-way paths. It has little orange arrows that are exactly what it sounds like. You can only move one way. But for the purposes of combat, spaces that have those one-way pathways are still considered to be adjacent. So you can run, but you can't hide when it comes to these spaces being adjacent. There was something you were mentioning earlier, Milo, about the levels of this board.
Yeah. Yeah, like around the perimeter of the board, you can see in the art that's depicted that there's like these sort of towers almost, and some of the spaces have ladders going up to them. But obviously, if you were in this space, you could jump down into the like open pit area, if you will, and it would be easy enough to shoot back up at those people with like arrows or whatever. But it wouldn't be easy to like climb up, and so that's why the arrows are one way, because there are these just like giant walls. So I both loved and hated having those like one direction spaces. Sometimes I was like, haha, perfect. You can't come up this way. And then in the same breath, I could be like, oh wait, no, that's bad for me. Now I can't go back down, like.
Absolutely.
So
For sure. And I find it interesting that there are a couple of spaces on here that have 4 zones notated on them, whereas on the other side, on that forest board, there aren't many spaces where you can reach everywhere.
No.
Whereas on this one, you can almost reach just about anywhere on the board with those 2 4-zone
Yeah.
spaces. But at the same time, they have a lot of access points. So they might be very attractive for a ranged player to hop up into those spaces, but maybe some danger lurking.
One other thing I noticed about this board is like how the artwork really pops in it, because there are many, many spaces that the art is sort of like overlaying in the individual like spaces themselves, whether it's like crates that are there or just the like cement. But I don't think it's really something that I often pay attention to on the boards. It's like the artwork, not always, but this one, it like really, really caught my eye, and I found myself sort of like imagining what sort of scene would be playing out as we were like playing our characters and dancing around the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just as sort of final thoughts on the board itself, there's a lot of variety on these 2 boards. Some really unique experiences where you can take the same 2 characters, the same 2 decks, and have vastly different experiences just based on that board alone, which is really cool to me.
Yep. Okay, before we get too into the characters and dive into their decks, there's a new mechanic related to the scheme cards. So why don't you tell us more about that?
Sure. These are called ongoing schemes, and each of the decks in this set, and I assume the other Witcher set as well, although I'm not familiar with it, but in Steel and Silver, each of our decks have these ongoing scheme cards, and they have you take your traditional scheme cards, which are a one-and-done action, and add on an extra little tail to it, in which you play your scheme card, it goes into play, and then there's an ongoing effect, which will give each of these characters some sort of benefit that's going on until a discard trigger happens. So there'll be cool things that happen over and over again until some specific event happens to trigger their discard. And that it's neat to see, always neat to see new little tweaks thrown into these sets, but that don't like sort of upset the whole kit and caboodle of the system itself. So you're going to be hearing more about each of these the specific cards for each deck as we talk about them. So with that being said, those are ongoing schemes. Now let's talk about our first character of this set.
The first character we're going to talk about is Geralt of Rivia, who's the main Witcher in this story. So he has a starting health of 16, which is the highest out of all of the 3 characters in this set. And his sidekick is Dandelion, who is a bard and has a starting health of 5. Can you tell us about his special ability?
Absolutely, yes. So the special ability for Geralt is called Always Prepared, and that's going to introduce a degree of like pre-game deck building, customization of his deck before the game starts. So before a game begins in which Geralt is participating, there are some specific special attack, defense, and scheme cards, and the player using this character is going to have to choose one of each of these special cards to add into the deck at the start of the game, and the others are just set aside. And those add some special abilities that will give like specific benefits depending on which character Geralt is against, and so this is a really neat mechanic. I think maybe it lends itself more to experienced players that will be more familiar with who they're going up against. But it might also be a way to sort of hamper or slow down an experienced player to sort of balance the experience levels at the table. And yeah, anytime that there's the option to do that without asking someone to, can you play less hard against a newer player, I think that's a great option to have available.
Yeah, the customization just being an option is so cool. And like you said, it's the first time that we've seen it in Unmatched. And also, like you said, it's great to be able to think about, okay, who am I going up against? Is it going to be better to have this card or this card? And so I played against Geralt. I did not get to play him, but I played against him, and I know which cards I would have built into my own deck if I played him next time, and I know what I will use.
You say that, but it's all about who you're against.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I guess in the reverse of the 2 characters that we played, I think right. I know which ones I would have used.
Sure, absolutely. So we've got some notable cards in this deck, which either both just tickled us or really made the deck itself come to life. And the first one that kind of delighted you, Milo, is called Annoying Tune.
Yes, Annoying Tune. That was a Dandelion card, and I think the reason that I liked it so much was because I obviously, like I said, I didn't see the show. I haven't watched anything of it yet, but through this deck and this card specifically, I was able to really, really learn a lot about the character. So it was cute and funny, and it thematically made sense. The ability on the card and what the card does, it made sense in the story, and I was like, oh, that's so cool.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you're not familiar with the Witcher series, this bard just keeps on showing up whether or not Geralt wants him there. And so he's always there to record the tales and extrapolate on them. And so this Annoying Tune, it forces the other player to move away because they are just cannot stand to be around
they're so
this
fed
human
up.
being. Absolutely. It's so cool. The next card I want to talk about is a scheme card called Witcher Senses. And we talked about those gear cards that are chosen at the start of the game. And this scheme card will allow the Geralt player to go through either the deck or the discard pile to find those gear cards and put them into their hand. And not only that, but if you choose to find your gear card from your deck, that Witcher Senses card goes back into your deck. So it might show up over and over again. And so you're relying less on the draw to find those most critical cards in your deck. And oh my gosh, it's just so cool that you can just find these cards that you've chosen at the start of the game to slice and dice your opponents or protect yourself from the attacks to come.
Yeah, in that specific situation with that card, there's even more customization, because at that point you're sort of customizing your hand. At the beginning you customize your deck, later you can customize your hand if you get that card over and over. What an annoying card.
but not an annoying tune.
No.
So the ongoing schemes in Geralt's deck, they are the two gear cards that you have to choose from at the start of the game. So the first one is called Tawny Owl, and when that one is out, its ongoing effect is that it's going to allow that player to ignore the effects that will cause them to discard a card from their hand, which is super powerful to not lose your cards in that way. The other one is called Blizzard, and that ongoing effect means that your opponents cannot gain actions. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That one in particular, if you're against the right opponent, could be so punishing.
Yeah, very detrimental even. If a character is like built on taking extra actions and that's just taken away, ugh.
Yeah. And so both of these ongoing Steam cards leave the game if Geralt is unable to attack or unwilling to attack on a turn, which is very thematic for this character who is constantly finding themselves in the midst of fights, maybe that they want or do not want or seek out. And so it's very thematic that those ongoing cards leave the game when Geralt takes a beat to do something other than attack. What are your thoughts? I know you haven't played the deck quite as much as myself, but what are your thoughts on Geralt?
He was super cool. I loved getting to know his character and his sidekick. I was intrigued by like The Witcher, like the TV show beforehand, and I played with the Leshen, and I've played with Ciri.
Yep, Ciri.
Yeah. So I had played with them and I enjoyed playing them, but I wasn't like, okay, these are really cool characters and I want to get to know the show now, maybe I'll watch it. However, after playing with Geralt, like against in a game, I think I definitely want to watch the TV show. So I loved getting to know his character that way and learning more about the story, but also the customization was a super, super cool effect, and I would love to customize my own Geralt deck sometime.
For sure, for sure. The thing I found with this deck is that it's, again, very thematic for this character because some of those cards, some of those attack cards, those attack gear cards can really take like a powerful, domineering character and just kind of slice them apart like butter, like just ignoring their defense cards or allowing Geralt to have extra actions, which probably will result in extra attacks. Really neat to see how this character can be stronger against characters that on paper would be sort of gigantic threats. So really, really neat deck. And next up, we're going to be talking about Ciri.
All right, next up for deck dissection, we're going to be talking about Ciri. So, Ciri is one of the main characters. She sort of grows in prominence and power, and definitely grows in prominence and power throughout the game. We'll touch more on that in a second. Ciri has a starting health of 15 and has a sidekick named Iwaraquox. And Iwaraquox is the unicorn sidekicks with a bunch of really cool lore that I have learned about while playing the set. It's been really fun. He's super cool, and his health is 7 that it starts out at. So tell us more about this deck.
Sure. So Ciri's special ability is called Source. A source, it shows up as like a little bubble on the left side of certain cards. And as these source cards wind up in Ciri's discard pile, her strength grows. So there are several cards that have special effects that are triggered by having a certain number of source in that discard pile. And it's just really, really neat. Thematically, this is someone who doesn't quite understand the power that she has, and then as the story evolves, she learns more about her power, how to yield it, and becoming a really truly frightening force. play style wise, we're talking about high risk, high reward. Ciri is not a particularly strong deck right out of the gate, but if other players at the table allow her to get that source discard pile really growing strong, then she's probably going to steamroll to a victory. So that's pretty neat in that way. You know what the downside to that is, as I said, can be a little bit fragile early in the game, and so you need to be careful with where you're going to be positioning on the board. Probably not rushing into a lot of battles early in the game. One interesting note about this source discard pile is when playing in Tales to Amaze, the cooperative version of Unmatched. There is one of the minions, and the Tales to Amaze is like the effects on the Loveland Frog cards wind up forcing players to discard, to burn their entire discard pile. And in the case of Ciri, whose whole drive is to build up a powerful discard pile, that could be potentially game breaking, like using all of that momentum and then having it flushed down the toilet. So if you're looking for like a unique challenge in Tales to Amaze, that might be a way to go. Or if you're worried about having your game feeling like it was broken, maybe that's a combination you want to avoid. Anyways, side quest over. We've got a few notable cards for this deck as well. The first one is called Bane of the Ain-El. This is one of Irawquax's cards that allows this unicorn to run through opposing characters and deal damage to one of them along the way. And I just love the visual of that, of this like feisty, angry unicorn running to protect its friend and just, you know, doing a little bit of...
like charging its way through the crowd and like stabbing people with its horn as it goes.
Almost sounds like a matador bull.
Yeah, you're right.
So that's neat. The next one I want to talk about is called Child of the Elder Blood. And so all of these Ciri cards, they have the effect on the cards where these attacks that are triggered by the number of source in the discard pile. But there's one, this Child of the Elder Blood card, that is just, it's a scheme card. You play it and you just deal damage. And it's the amount of damage grows depending on the amount of source in the discard pile. And anytime we see that in an Unmatched deck where you can just play a card, not worry about the other player canceling the effects of your card, just play a card, do damage, go have a coffee, is a really neat thing to see. And that's why I think that card in particular is quite notable. The ongoing scheme card for Ciri's deck, there's just one in this one. It's called Unicorn Ally. And when this Unicorn Ally card is on the table, its ongoing effect is that after each combat that the Ciri player is in, they'll be drawing one card. So each combat equals one new card. But if the Ciri player has 5 or more cards in hand, then that ongoing card will leave the table. And so it saves you a little bit less maneuvering, perhaps, if your board positioning is strong. So that's and that gives you access, of course, to more source cards to potentially get into your discard pile and grow that strength more quickly.
Yeah, I remember that card. I feel like I used it in the game that I played as Ciri when I think I had like done a bunch of attacking and I had used the dual attack or defend cards. Versatile, yes. So I had used a bunch of those to attack, and I didn't have any shields in my hand, and I was like, this isn't great because then I'm very vulnerable. But with the draw, I was able to, get some of those cards back, which was great. Came in handy just in the nick of time.
Amazing. So this is quite possibly, in the hands of the right player, the most powerful of these 3 decks. If Ciri can be allowed to like bloom to her full strength, is really, really satisfying to see how much damage you can do on the board.
Yeah, I played her the one time, and like out of the 3 characters, I chose her because she sounded super cool. And I was like, ooh, a bit of a long game going on for her. I want to try that. And I think earlier you were talking about like how she didn't like in the beginning of the TV show, like doesn't understand her like true power. And like as the show goes on, it sort of like blooms. And the same thing happened for me, like playing her. I think in the beginning, I didn't know like how powerful she could be. But as I continued to play her, it just like my eyes were opened and I morphed into an eviler version of myself. Next in the deck dissection, we're going to talk about the Ancient Leshen. So the Ancient Leshen, for those of you who aren't familiar, could be most comparable to an Ent from like Lord of the Rings, the like big tree creatures. And it has a starting health of 13, and it has 2 wolf sidekicks that are just little tokens that have no health. So they're like a one and done. If you hit them once, they'll leave the board. Yeah, tell us about the Leshen's special ability.
All right, so the special ability is called Heart of the Forest, and it's got a couple of different parts to it. Number one is the movement difference between the Ancient Leshen and those wolves. The Ancient Leshen only moves 1 space per maneuver, which means it's moving very slowly unless you're boosting that movement. But the wolves are always moving 3 each, or up to 3. And so there's like a dichotomy. There's a contrast between the movement, the fast movement of the wolves, and the slow like lurching of this giant like tree monster. So that's neat. But the other part of Heart of the Forest is that if the Leshen attacks twice in a turn, if it attacks 2 times in a row, that second attack gets a plus 3 to its attack ability. It moves slow, but if it winds up in the right place at the right time, it can do a lot of damage. So this deck is really interesting. It's interesting that it's got a lot of kind of board control. Although the Leshen looks like a gigantic piece compared to the other ones, it's not a deck that's meant to like rush forward and attack. It's all about biding your time, positioning with the wolves, and finding yourself in the right position to kind of rush in, smash, and then flee, run away.
Yeah.
If it can. The downside though is that it can rely a lot on those wolves staying in play to really maximize the abilities of this deck. Now we've got a few notable cards for this one as well. The first one is called Flock of Birds, and this is an attack card. It's already got a strength of 5.
5, yeah.
Yeah, and so after this is done, the after combat effect is that the Leshen just gets to poof, move to a different space. And so as we're saying, a lot of that hit and run kind of play style, this card plays into that perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thematics of like this card also make sense. A flock of birds. Just that card alone having 5 damage, which is like a very, very high amount for just a regular, like any unmatched card. Like 5 is a lot. Yeah. It makes me think of the birds, the
Hitchcock birds?
Yeah,
Oh my
exactly.
gosh.
Like that's terrifying. Having like a million birds come and attack you.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah. So that's like what I picture, and like maybe also the birds like pick the Leshen up and fly him away, and that's why he like goes to another spot at the end of his turn. I don't know. That's what I pictured.
I love that. That's very imaginative. Very cool. So the next card is called Vanish into Murder, which I feel like should be the name of a movie at some point in time, if it isn't already.
Vanish into murder the birds, because that's what you call a flock of like crows.
Right.
A murder.
Oh my gosh! Vanish into Murder. Yes. So this one is a scheme card, I believe. So you play it, and it does 1 damage to each opposing fighter in the Leshen's zone, and then poof. The Leshen disappears and is gone until the beginning of its next turn. And so, again, you can't attack the Leshen if it's not on the board. And so it's a great way to get to kind of pick away, especially if you're against a large number of opposing fighters, and then wind up just somewhere else. Really kind of spooky, manipulative, frustrating kind of deck to play against. Our next card is called Harrying Strike. This is a card that's for the wolves, and this one adds +2 strength to the card for each of that player's fighters that are adjacent to the opposing fighter. So if you've done sort of a swarm attack, then this wolf card will add potentially upwards of 6 or 8 damage if all 3 of your characters are right around the opposing fighter. The ongoing scheme card for this deck is called Strength of the Pack. And so this one is like perhaps the most amazing card in the entire set. This one, when it's on the table, its ongoing ability is that the Leshen recovers 1 health at the start of its turn. The caveat, though, the way it leaves the game is that if the Leshen is not in the same zone as either of its wolves at the end of its turn, then that Strength of the Pack card goes away. So you're really incentivized to kind of keep your distance, keep your wolves close, and find a way to protect at least one of them, so you can really milk those +1 health for as long as possible. And there's 2 of them in the deck, so if you can get 2 of them out at the same time, that means +2 health at the start of every turn that you're in the same space, the same zone as your wolves. Really cool deck. Really cool deck.
It's a super cool deck. That card specifically is, how do I put this lightly? The bane of my existence. We played this game. You were the Witcher. I was Ciri. And I had played against you being the Leshen before. And that time we had been playing like a big multiplayer group game, and so like I was less concerned about the Leshen because I was so concerned with everyone. But in this game, I was like wearing you down slowly, and I didn't feel like I was getting anywhere because you kept healing, and I kept getting rid of your wolves, and you just kept bringing them back. And like 1 health per turn doesn't sound like a lot. But when the game is like an hour long and like you just keep healing, I swear, like during that game, I probably dealt, what's the Leshen's health? Like 13? I probably did like double that. I probably got close to like 30 damage in that game, and I still lost. Oh my God. I don't think that there's ever been a card that frustrated me so much. And we've played a lot of Unmatched, especially together. I would love to have a time when that card benefited me, because we played it just before filming this, and I played the Leshen, and that card came out, and then both of my wolves were killed, and the card left immediately. So, but it's a great card, and the Leshen deck in general is very, very cool. I have much respect for the Leshen.
Respect the Leshen. Put that on a t-shirt. So Milo, we've talked about these 3 decks. It's time to make your pick. Which of the 3 decks is your favorite to play as? You haven't had quite as much experience as myself this time around, but what are your thoughts?
I think, oh no. Okay, I think the Leshen is my favorite.
Yeah.
I only played it the 1 time just before this video, but I played against it twice, and playing it once, like, it was super cool. And my first experience with the Leshen in that like big multiplayer game I mentioned, I remember like you putting the mini on the table, and like I feel like the word mini isn't appropriate for the Leshen because it's a biggie. It's not a mini. It's so big. And you placed it down, and I was like, I am terrified already. And then like hearing about like what this character was like in the show and stuff, I was like, yeah, that's terrifying. No, thank you. And so I like found it so interesting and fun to like watch you play it, and really realize that despite it being so big and huge, like it doesn't move very fast. It does a lot of damage. Yes, it does, because it's so big, but it doesn't move. It's like slow and sort of like lumbering around. And so I think it was a very like interesting strategy to like always include the wolves and like rely on them so much. I want to play the Leshen again and like really like just perfect that strategy with it. So yeah, I think I gotta say the Leshen.
All right, very good. So my pick is also the Ancient Leshen for this deck. My journey with the Leshen has been different. I kept coming back to this deck more than the other two because I was so bad at playing as this character. My first game was the Ancient Leshen playing against Geralt, and I lost in like 3 turns because Geralt's cards, if the right cards are out, can just like kind of slice through the Leshen like butter. And so I was like, maybe this is just a bad deck. And so I wanted to play again, and then I played it again and again, and I was like, okay, now I'm getting the hang of this. So the learning curve for me with the Leshen has really, I've got this, I don't know if you can call it an emotional connection with a game character, a game deck, but I really enjoy what that deck can do. The other 2 decks, I really enjoy them and I would play them anytime, but I've got a real strong connection with the one deck in there that is not one of the main characters. So we both picked the Ancient Leshen as our favorites from this deck, and so now it's time for those comparative ratings. Milo, your favorite Unmatched set of all time is Houdini versus the Genie. My favorite all-time set is Slings and Arrows. And now it's time to deliver our rating, comparing this set versus your favorite. So, so I'm going to give you the floor first. Do you have a rating in mind for Steel and Silver in comparison to Houdini versus the Genie?
I do, yes.
Okay.
So, I rate this an 11.
What?
Which is huge because
Wow.
Houdini and the Genie has been my favorite for so long. And I think it's really like funny that I'm rating this one so incredibly high when I haven't even seen the TV show.
Wow.
But I think that like just playing against these characters or playing as the characters has convinced me to watch the show. I learned so much about all of them and I think that they're so cool. And also the fact that we both chose the Leshen as our favorite character was super weird and fun because we've never chosen the same character before. That was very different for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just had such a good time playing it that I think it's my new favorite.
Holy cow.
I know.
I did not expect that.
I really enjoyed it.
I didn't think any set was going to take down Houdini versus the Genie for you.
I mean, in terms of like a box set, I do think that Steel and Silver has replaced Houdini versus the Genie, but Houdini as an individual character might always have my heart.
Very nice, very nice. So for myself, I'm going to rate Steel and Silver an 8.5 out of 10. I really liked exploring everything that came in this set. I'm not sure I would recommend it for new players. I think there's a little bit more accessibility with Slings and Arrows. I think there's more accessibility with the Battle of Legends games that we've experienced. Although Volume 3 Battle of Legends coming soon, as we learned. Yes. But for this particular set, really strong set. I really liked it, but not quite going to eclipse Slings and Arrows for me. 8.5 for me. So that's it. So our question for you is going to be, have you played this set? Do you watch The Witcher? What is your favorite Unmatched set? Let us know in the comments of this video. If you're not already, make sure to smash that subscribe button and so that you can follow along and hear all of the other Unmatched thoughts that we have coming for you in the future, as well as the ones in the past. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Restoration Games, for sending us a copy of this set for us to review. And we'll be back again soon. And until then, whether you've got little players
Or big players
make sure that you keep playing games
that make your thumbs go way up. Bye for now.
Bye bye.